Whoa, my face is super washed out. I have a bad camera here. Let's see if I can get a better camera. But hello, everyone. I'm Josh Justice, aka Coding It Wrong, and you can already see that I'm streaming it wrong. But as you watch me code, you can decide if I'm coding it wrong as well. We got the other camera with the fisheye lens view, so you can see everything that's going on in here. So that's very exciting. Let's pop it over here. Yeah, I'm glad everybody is back here for the stream. I'm glad to be back. It's been a couple weeks that I've been away. I've been out at a conference. I got a chance to attend React Advanced London 2022. That was super exciting to meet a bunch of folks there. I got to do some virtual workshops at the end of the week last week, remotely on Expo, like we've been doing here, and on React Native testing, like we've been doing here. Some of my favorite topics. So a bit more about workshops. So React Advanced has happened. There's 3 more workshops that I'm at this fall, and you could join me at those if you like. There's Connect Tech in Atlanta, Georgia on November 7th, and React Day Berlin in December. I forget the exact dates, but if you go to codingitwrong.com/speaking, you can find out more about all these workshops coming up. The Berlin ones I'll be remote, I'll be virtual. The Atlanta one I'll be in person, and that's a full day one. So I'd love for you to join at any of those if you're able to. I want to say thanks again to Test Double, my employer, for giving me the chance to stream like this and supporting me. I'd love to just get a chance to share info with others, and it's a great ensemble programming session in the middle of my work week. So where I was for the past week, I was out in England. It was my first visit to England, so that was very exciting for the conference. And as I went there, I got an idea for a feature for my app for Firehose, which we built on the stream. So let me show you that if you haven't been on the stream before to see it. Firehose is this link sharing app built with Expo for web so that it runs on web and on mobile. And I was on mobile internet roaming, and so as a result, things were a little bit slower than usual. And so my usually instantaneous web requests were just a little bit slower. And so I realized that in building Firehose in a very efficient way, shall we say, that I had not put very many loading indicators in there. And it seems like that would be a good idea. So that's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to be looking at putting loading indicators into here, because the indicators themselves are very straightforward because we've got lots of options with React Native Paper, but how to think about putting this functionality in and how to think about testing it. Sometimes it's not as clear if or how to test transient situations like loading states. Let me just check my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to say one other thing. Coming back to the U.S., it's been great to be back to see my family and be back at home. I got to vote today. So in the U.S., we've got some early voting right now for the elections coming up. And if you're in the U.S., I would really encourage you, please go and vote if you're eligible to vote. It's an important part of influencing the direction of our country, and there's a big, big need for it. So please get out there and vote, if at all possible, if you're in the U.S. and eligible. So with that, let's get started. I've got my app here, got Firehose running in web and on mobile. And, you know, sometimes when you've got a web and mobile app, it can be useful to run on the web for some of the extra browser features that are available in the browser DevTools. It's very nice. Let's try it for the sake of throttling here. So I'm just going to show one example of a quick request. If I have this link in the list and I click Mark Red, it disappears pretty much instantly when I'm running in local development. But let's see something else. Let's pull up twitter.com. And maybe we say, you know, okay, on Twitter, I want to delete that link right now. Maybe, I don't know why, like this week, I might want to delete Twitter, but that might just be something that I feel like doing this week out of the blue for no particular reason. So let's see about that. But let's turn throttling on. We'll say regular 3G. It's very positive in Firefox. Use Firefox if you haven't used Firefox. It runs great, and you're supporting an open web without Google being in control. Okay, so in the DevTools here in Firefox, we can turn on regular 3G, and then let's hit delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes, delete. Click it. Oh, and that actually is instantaneous. That's very interesting. All right, well, maybe I didn't test out the regular 3G beforehand, but let's try out. Yeah, where's the bad? I want bad 3G like in Chrome. Let's try out clicking Mark Red if that's quick. That's still pretty fast. All right, well, maybe Google does that better. But in any case, I want to show you how to add delays into your code so you can see when it's running slower. I did this a little bit in advance. Let's see if I got this code ready. Yeah, there it is. All right, it's in bookmark list index. We'll look at the code a little bit later to review it. But I've added this in, and this is common. I need to like save this snippet. But what you can do, if you've got an async function, we've got this update that runs, and it runs very fast. So we want to simulate it running slower so we can see it and visualize it. What you can do is put in a promise, and when this promise resolves, a custom promise with new promise, you set timeout. You can just pass it the resolve function there, because when you build a new promise, you pass it a callback, you get a resolve function that you can call. And that timeout is just after 1 second. So this means that after the bookmark client updates, we're going to wait for 1 second before we refresh the list. I could also put it beforehand. You know, basically we're adding a wait in before the UI update. So I think this will be sufficient for our purposes here. This will actually work on web and mobile, so that's a little bit nice there. Add Twitter one more time. And now when I click mark red, I'm going to expect about a 1 second delay before that actually shows up as red in the UI. Click it. Yeah, and now it shows up. And so you saw there is a 1 second delay there. It can be up to a couple seconds if you don't have a good connection. And there's nothing in the UI that shows that's happening. I found that sometimes I wonder, especially tapping on a mobile phone, I'm not sure if I've tapped the button correctly. So there's not a lot of feedback. So that's one example of a place where we'd like some loading state behavior. Let's see what else. I think what I'd like to do, because this is sort of indirect, it's not like a direct feature. I want to accomplish this. It's kind of like a quality that we want to add throughout our app. So let's look through the functionality and see where we'd like to put this. I've got my note-taking app up here. I've got my little note there. And so let's go through the app and see where we'd like to add loading states. I think I do have a loading state on the loading of the list. Let's reload that to see. Yeah, that's there. Okay, so we are getting a loading state when the screen comes up. And even in that case, so I'm thinking as a side project, I got a lot going on right now, very busy. Want to really get the highest value as quick as possible. So I want to find those cases where the loading states are going to provide the most value. So most of the time I spend is in the unread links list, adding a URL, and then interacting with unread links in my list here with these buttons. So let's say unread links, mark read, edit, and delete are all cases I'd like to add. Also add link. We'll come back to that to kind of prioritize it. So what else? We've got the read links list where we can mark unread, edit, or delete. Mark unread, edit, delete, paginate. So like change around there. Search. Those are all situations, things we can do. Oh, let's go back to unread and edit here. So you have save changes to edited link. That's a good case. And I don't actually, there's tags. Yeah, I saw actually with tags, there's load tags. Right now it shows no tags. So that's a bit unfortunate. That's misleading. So it would be good to add some loading functionality right there. But as I think about all these, it's really these actions on unread links that are the highest priority for me. Maybe saving as well. Add link doesn't feel. So let's organize this list. Read links is lower priority. We might get some of that for free, but I'm not in there as much. And loading tags is kind of lower priority, although it does look unfortunate. Mark read. So edit just navigates to this screen. I think on the edit screen, it's the loading link to edit. I think that gets loaded in there. But I think it's mark read and delete, that those really, there's no visual feedback that confuse me the most. So I think mark read and delete are the ones that I really want to prioritize the most. And so let's jump in and do that. Yeah, and as we go through the test, we'll get sort of a sense of how we want to approach it. So what functionality do we want? How do we want this loading state to show? In some apps, I've seen like a loading indicator icon show on the button, or just see the button disabled, or show some kind of indicator. Having a modal that shows up over everything to block everything can feel kind of disruptive, so that's probably not preferable. So I think I'm going to do what I've done in my other React Native app, Surely, which is just when I interact with a row on here, let's add one more so we can visualize it. Goodle.com. Don't want to risk that. Don't know what that might be. You saw actually adding, I do have a loading indicator there. So let me check that off. That's actually handled already. Very nice. So What I've done in this case is just for a given row, when I interact with mark red or delete, I'll just set all the buttons in the row to be disabled because I don't want to interact with anything else there. So that kind of visually shows me what's going on, and I think that's probably good enough for now, rather than me having to pick something to do because I have trouble designing and deciding what to do exactly. So let's handle that. The next question is, where do we want to implement this functionality? So I was thinking, as I thought about this in advance, I've actually converted Firehose over to use React Query, and it provides a lot of really nice functionality like automatic reloading and things like that. And I haven't really used the use mutation hook yet. The way this is set up is that a bookmark row gets these props for on mark read, on delete, and so it just see your friend. Let's find it. Are you sure you want to delete? On delete, and then button delete, on edit, on mark read. So we just kind of execute those directly. So bookmark row doesn't know anything about the larger data loading context. I think I do want to test this at the bookmark row level, just because this isn't a main functionality but kind of a side thing. It's nicer just to really focus that test in. So on a previous stream, we added a bookmark row test in here. We added a deleting test to make sure it calls the onDelete prop. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to test the showing of the modal up on here. But now I find that I've regretted the fact that I didn't come back to this to-do to cover the other behavior besides delete. And now we do want to do mark read. Maybe we'll do, yeah, mark read is the most common thing. I usually read the things I save instead of deleting them. So let's do that. Let's copy this test for mark read and put that in. Let's cover the existing behavior with test, and then we'll change the behavior. Yeah, mark read. We'll keep that to do because we're going to not get through everything. And so let's see what's happening in this test here. Marking red calls the onMarkRed prop. We're going to need a mock function there that we call onMarkRed. We put it in. So we render the bookmark row with a provider around it. This assertion was just confirming that the modal didn't show up at first because we were test driving it. So that can probably go away. So we're going to say get by text mark red. That's nice and simple. And do we have a get by role in here? I forget, on another stream. That might have been another app. But let's actually try it. Let's do get by role button name mark red. Because I'm using React Native Paper, I think these role-based queries will work. They're a good idea, and it gives our test some extra fidelity, some extra clarity and reliability to make sure our app is accessible. So when we tap on mark red, we press. It's not a tap, it's not a click, it's a press. We want to make sure the onMarkRed prop is called. And this should pass unless I've gotten the test wrong. So let's save and let's see. Clear out this console. Timed out and wait for element to be removed. This is in another test, so let's come back to that. That's because of my timeout thing, I think. Let's narrow to bookmark row. All right, so that covers it. So let's commit this. Test marking red. All right, so now we've got a test of when we tap on mark red, it calls them on mark red prop. So now we can specify in the test, and we're going to test drive this again, because especially with trivial stuff like loading states, it's so easy once you've written it to not even remember to think about adding a test, or just to decide it's not worth it because it's hard to think about. Let's think about the test first so we can be sure to get it in. So really there's different scenarios here, which is marking red, we say describe while loading, and then we say it disables all buttons. And deactivates. That seems a more inclusive language, even if that is in the code or the props or the specs or things like that. So while it's loading, it deactivates all buttons. It calls the onMarkRed prop. That is instantaneous, so that kind of feels like an initial thing. And then we can say, I think we can say, let's go ahead and specify what else we want to do. After, say, upon success, reactivates all buttons. And let's do also a upon failure, which I don't always remember to handle. And let's just say, at least for now, it reactivates all buttons, and we can say a to-do display error message. I'm not totally sure where that would display in here, and maybe we don't handle that on the stream. Yeah, okay. So this kind of has specified out what we need to add. Let's see how the test runner runs these to start out. Describe that to-do is not a function. Maybe to-do is on its. It.to-do. I think this is a jest thing, right? To-do must be called with only a description. So it really indicates to us that we haven't done anything yet. Yeah, very cool. So now we got while loading, deactivates all buttons. We haven't actually implemented that test yet to make it fail. And we need to implement upon success and upon failure. So let's focus on while loading, because that's the core thing we really want to accomplish here. All of this is going to be the same, and I'm going to copy and paste it to begin. Maybe we extract some duplication later. On mark red, I think I'm not going to check this. Oh, but what I want to do here, I want it to be a function. I don't need to check that it's called, because I've already checked that in another test. But I want to return a new promise. And actually, I like to say, does not settle. Settling is the term for a promise when it resolves or rejects. So how do we have a promise that does not settle? Really, we just have a promise that has a callback that does nothing. It never calls, resolve, or reject. So on mark red, we return does not settle. So this is what ensures that this is still going to be while loading while we're testing it. So now we press fire event press, and we can say, now I need to look up in React Native tested library how to check that it's deactivated or disabled. Let's check the React Native testing library, React Native paper docs. Yeah, I'll zoom out for a little bit. Apologize if it's hard to read. Disabled, Boolean, whether the button is disabled. All right, so that's that. Now we need to look in React Native testing library how to specify this, how to look for it. And actually, this might even be, just thinking about the different libraries, in Jest native, it might be an assertion we can do. To be disabled, sure enough. Check whether or not an element is disabled from a user perspective. Cool. Check whether it has a disabled, proper accessibility state disabled, true. So let's specify that. Now we expect to be disabled. And let's go ahead, because they're all pretty similar, let's go ahead and assert all of them. And then let's just see. I expect this test, so it's a fail to begin. We're doing test-driven development, and we have not yet enabled this disabling functionality, so I expect it to fail. All right, so we unable to find an element with accessibility role. Oh, I have a typo here. The button's name is not disabled. Delete is the button's name. While loading, it deactivates all buttons. Expect it to be disabled. That's not right. So this is why it's good to check to make sure that your tests are failing first in TDD before you get to the pass, because this shouldn't be disabled. Let's check and see if it succeeds also for to be enabled. The same button should not be able to be disabled and enabled, and yet it is. While loading, it deactivates. Oh. So now I'm wondering if something is wrong in the test runner. True to equal false. Let's just make sure that this fails at least. That fails. And yet this button is both enabled and disabled. That's unfortunate. So let's try another approach, and I can maybe look into that later. To have prop. And I think that this is actually just that the prop disabled is even present. I think it'll succeed. So this should not have that prop. There we go. Expect the element to have prop disabled, but receives null. So I think that'll work for our testing purposes as well. All right, so let's change all the assertions to work in the same way, and we won't actually get to see if they're failing until we get through them. But yeah, so now let's get the mark red button disabling here. The simplest way to get this test to pass in a TDD approach would just be to always put the disabled prop on it, but it might cause another test in this file to fail, which would be fine, because then we can go from there. So this is the mark red. So we have a test ID in there. So check this out. This has caused another test to fail because the test that the onMarkRed prop is called, that prop won't be called if the button is disabled. So now our other test is forcing us to implement some conditionality here. So when would we want this button to be disabled? We want it to be disabled. Check it out, disabled. We want it to be disabled, deactivated when the onMarkRed function is running. Now, in React Query, we can use the useMutation hook to get access to the data about whether it's loading or not, and that could be a good approach. Maybe I'm just old school, but because I have this bookmark row that I'm testing directly that doesn't have React Query used internally, I'd kind of like to do something simpler and implement it just within the component itself. That's maybe not simpler because I have to implement it myself, but it is localized to the bookmark row. And then the bookmark row is durable whether I'm using React Query or anything else in the future. So let's do that. And one of the nice things about a great testing approach is you can always refactor it in the future, whether you're keeping the interface the same or changing it. So just within the bookmark row, how would we handle this? Well, let's just do the simplest thing first. We'll just say is update in progress. Not sure. Loading feels like for a query more so than an update. So we have an is update in progress that starts as false, and then while we mark red, let's add a function for that. Handle mark red. We're going to run our mark red, but before we run it, we're going to set is update in progress to false. And then, it's kind of a long file with this big font size, but at least y'all can see it. So this is disabled as like is update in progress. And on press we handle mark red instead of just calling it directly. So what this should do is when we click that button, it should set, oh, come on, import set state. Yeah. Oh, use state. I don't know, nothing about nothing. Verifying Microsoft Outlook. Please don't do that. All right, let's save the changes here and let's see if the test passes. Deactivates all buttons. Expected. Oh, check it out. We are on the mark red button. Yeah, we tap it and then we expect it to have the prop disabled. So something has not happened. Let's try in the UI here just to see if it's working. Yeah, no, it didn't actually disable it. So we've got something wrong. Oh, no, set update in progress true. Right, that's what it is. Believe it or not, I make these mistakes even when I'm not on a stream. All right. Mark red to have prop disabled. Yeah, there, now it is disabled. I wonder if it's something to do with, I mean, it could be an obvious mistake of mine, or it could be something to do, oh, check it out. It's a custom component of mine, button with spacing. I bet I'm not passing the disabled prop through to it. So let's go to that definition. Yeah, props. Let's log this out then. Console.log props with defaults. Let's see if that disabled is making its way through. Disabled false. Disabled true. And let's just narrow down to the one test because that's going to help us here. Disabled false. And it goes away. Why did it go away? Oh, there's multiple buttons. Mark red button disabled true. Is it maybe, I think, you know, what might be happening is, I think it's looking on a different element. It's maybe not finding the button, although you'd think it would. So let's log it out and find out. I haven't run across this before. I think I've used test IDs in the past, honestly, is what I've come down to. So let's log out this button. And we'll find this data. What does screen.getByRole give us in this case? All right, fiber. I learned about fibers at React Advanced a little bit more. Pending props. There could be a delay. Maybe it's not actually instantaneous. Oops, don't need to open that. Let's troubleshoot this. Handle mark red is update in progress. Let's remove the on mark red here, and let's see if we're not doing the loading. I don't imagine that'll throw anything off, but then this way it'll just be clear. And let's also, so I don't confuse myself, let me comment out these other buttons. So it's just checking the one, so we'll know for sure once it passes. Log in like crazy. So I think what I'd like to try here is, let's try get by test ID. It's not ideal, but maybe, you know, I don't know what's happening with the to be disabled either. So maybe this will help us narrow down what's going on. Bookmark row. Sorry for so much scrolling, but these files are a little bit large. Button with spacing. Does the test ID get passed down? Mark red. Test ID, mark red button. So let's try that. Get by test ID, mark red button to have prop disabled. Very interesting. Expected it to have prop disabled. I mean, what if I say disabled true? Mark red button. This is just very interesting. Button with spacing. I guess that maybe the test ID is just the parent there, or maybe it's not the child button. So confused. Let me check that logged out props with defaults here. Maybe there's a sign that something's going wrong here because there's a lot of logging that happens here. We're skipping these others. It's running the to-dos, deactivates all buttons. Okay, because it's the multiple buttons with defaults. We can maybe put a condition into here where we say, is it a test ID? I don't always do this. Props, I know you're in trouble with logging when you have to put conditionals around your logs. Yeah, but now we see just twice logged. So mark red button disabled false, and then it has disabled true. So disabled true. It should have it, but it's not. So why? So let's see what get by test ID gets us. Mark says all kids love logs. I don't want to get a copyright strike, otherwise I'd sing the Ren and Stimpy song. But also you don't want to hear me sing. React test instance. I might want to pending props, no disabled there. Oh, I think I saw one time that this actually disabled got mapped into the accessibility state. So let's see. Can I get into the props? Let me search for disabled all the way through the test here. No, that might be in the other app. We're in a real research mode, everybody. This might be the whole stream is getting this one test to pass. Which is why it's so tempting just to say, let's just not test it. But I deal with these things so you don't have to. So let's search in here, in Shirley, my other app. Disabled. So we're using the disabled prop, but am I not using it in any tests? I'm not. All right, so we're I don't know where I got this from. I don't know what project this was on that I learned about this, and we'll see if it's actually a thing or not. So can I get it? Props. Let's just log out the props next. Accessibility state disabled true. There it is. Getting into the accessibility state, disabled true. So ideally, the to be disabled matcher would catch this And I would love, I'm going to make myself a to-do to look into this afterwards to see why that's not happening. I mean, it's probably me doing something wrong rather than the library. But regardless, we can always refactor the tests later. So let's get them working now with this data structure that we see here. And then we'll see what we can do in the future. Accessibility state disabled true. I feel like this worked for me one time. Expect the button with the test ID to have prop accessibility state disabled true. No, that didn't work. So let's instead say props.accessibility state disabled to equal true. We're moving back away from abstractions towards something we can access directly. And it passed. Okay, but now we have fiddled with so many things. So even though it was red before, that was a different test. So now let's go back to remove this disabling functionality and make sure the test actually fails. We'll just do that right here. Yep, we expected it to be true, but it was actually false. So that's nice that that structure, that nested structure, is actually present there. All right, so is update in progress? And I think the way I found that was just by stumbling through the logged out data and see what I could find. So let's turn await on mark red back on. Hi, Mark red. So, and we'll see. Okay, so that succeeds. Everything succeeds. Now let's go here and refactor our test a bit. Because we did make some non-ideal changes, not to mention commenting out so many things, some non-ideal changes that we'd like to move away from if we can. Red roof. So let's see if get by role will actually work for us. Because that's one step more towards realism. Save. It passes. Let's break it again. It fails, so good. So that means we don't need to use the test ID here. We can use the role. The next thing I'd like to do, because I know I'm going to need it several times, let me actually pull out a helper function here. We can just put it right in line. You can make just custom matchers, but I want to get the RNTL one working later. So let me just make a function here, like is disabled. Since I'm writing it, let's just say is deactivated for goodness sake. Like, we could just use different words. It's okay. And we're going to return element props. Accessibility state disabled. So now what I expect we should be able to do is expect is deactivated to equal true. It passes. Let's break it again. It fails. Very good. And so what we've done, we've hidden this little bit of unfortunate property drilling we had to do in a helper function. So that way, we don't have to rely on it forever. If we find a better way to do that in the future, we can change it to one place. So we can say to do find out why is disabled was not working for me. Lots of to-dos on my streams. We get very little done. All right, so mark red is now disabled here. Now let's get the other buttons to be deactivated as well. Expect edit to be deactivated. We're going to have a quick round of changes here where we save. Why is that true already? That should be false to start. What is going on? That's surprising. You all, I would not script out this many mistakes. The edit button should be deactivated. Do I already regret doing this? Do I already? Props accessibility state disabled. Well, let's roll this back to see what I've done wrong here. So the edit button. Maybe the role lookup by name is not working right. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, we can look up the test ID with the edit button to get this logged out for us. And let's just give the edit button edit button. Props there, not getting logged out, but so okay, let's go back over to here. Log out the edit button and let's see what's going on. Oh, we can go ahead and do props, accessibility state. Disabled true. I mean, does that happen? Nope. Is it the edit button though? That is a question. Maybe this name is not working the way I expect. Am I on an old version of React Native testing library? No, that's pretty modern. Well, in any case, let's take this one back to by test ID. Did I spell it wrong? Yeah, it's test ID. Is disabled true in there when disabled does not pass at all? It is very confusing. Props. I mean, I'm just not sure if that's the edit button. I mean, it must be, because the test ID edit button. Well, let's just say it's hard-coded to disabled false and see if it then fails. Y'all, what is going on? Disabled false. Disabled false. But it's not the accessibility state. Disabled true. But I'm logging out. Edit button. Props. But we just said the props are disabled. What is going on? This is very mysterious. This is a very mysterious behavior on this stream. Just feels like it would be so much more productive to get it working first. Do I want to do that? Oh, I do get the test ID logged out there. Disabled false. What am I missing? Is there something? Disabled false. Very confusing. Well, let's try giving up on TDD for now, and let's try to actually implement this, and then we'll see what happens in the test there. Let's put disabled equals is update in process, and let's see it happening. Mark red, edit is disabled there. So great. So, and this is, we're saying when we click on mark red, deactivate all the buttons. So let's see what happens with the test now. I mean, it passes, but then I mean, so that makes me nervous. I mean, is the other one even working? Like, what if I took this back? So that one, that is disabled, is working. They're both button with spacing. They're both is update in process. Is disabled happening anywhere else in this file? Is it the fact? So here's another thing you can troubleshoot in a case like this. Let me switch the order and see if that causes them to fail in a different order. If I switch the order, it still considers the edit button. So we saw from running the app that the disabled state is making its way through. But something about this testing Logging it out. Let me use get by test ID down here. I'm really baffled by this, but I do want to understand it, and I do want to fix it. Props with the faults. Is it not making its way down there? It's not. It's not. And yet disabled true shows up there. Well, so let's log out what's happening with all the buttons. Maybe that will shed some light onto something. Let's say delete button, and we'll just get by a test ID just to make 100% sure. All right, so we're going to log out all 3 of the button states. Oh, delete button is not found. Mark red, disabled true, delete disabled false. So why is edit disabled true? What is going on? I'm so confused. Is it, oh, I saw that on press was, that's weird. Maybe, I saw that on press did not have a function passed to it. So maybe that's what's going wrong. Maybe it doesn't like that. So let's try if we give it an arrow function so there is something there. Oh, y'all, that's weird. That's some weird magic there with React Native Paper. So it seems like if on press is null, it's considered disabled. But if there is something passed into it, it doesn't. That's tricky. That's interesting. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. If a button doesn't have any behavior passed to it, it prevents errors, but that is surprising in this case. And so it kind of requires me in a test here to do more work, as well as embarrasses me on the stream. Not really that embarrassed. All right, so, wow, okay, that was a troubleshooting approach and a half. I guess that's something interesting. So if we had not done test-driven development, we would have put the real implementation in there and we wouldn't have run across that. That's a constraint. That's something to consider about test-driven development in React Native. All right, so let's roll all of this back. Let's go back to, and what is going on? That's failing. I want to get back to where I was before. So I want to take this out. I want to disable this disable test. I want to get rid of this logging because that's going to just confuse me. Let's comment it out for now because we might need it again. Deactivates all buttons is passing, and we're checking based on mark red. So now, and we're using is deactivated. So I'm betting that if I look for the edit button now that I do have an arrow function passed into it, I bet that this test will fail. It's not deactivated. Expected edit deactivated to be true, and it was false. So now our test is failing, and now we can come back and implement this with disabled equals is update in progress. Save. The test passes. Great. I bet the third one will be smoother. Expect the delete button to have prop disabled, but it does not. And now we add it in. Disable it if is update in progress. Of course, of course, of course. Expected to have prop disabled, but it received null. Oh, did I write the test wrong? Yeah. I did. So let's go back. Let's delete this back out. Change the test to be using our is deactivated helper here. All right. Is delete deactivated true? False, not implemented yet. Now we paste it in. Disable it when is update in progress. And it passes. All right, now we can remove these test IDs that aren't needed anymore, and I think it'll still pass. Great. Whoo-wee. That was a lot. But now, I mean, but think about this. I mean, whether you write the test before or afterwards, now we have safety to confirm that that prop is really being set in our test, and so we're not going to lose track of that if something goes wrong. So this is our while loading state. It deactivates all buttons. So, oh, and you know what? I remember from last time, there was something where we reactivated the buttons after certain things happened, like mark red or delete, but that actually, that state change caused a problem because the element was going away. So actually, this is actually all we need. We don't need to set the update to in progress to false afterwards. And let me leave myself a reminder after, because I might break it otherwise. Like, don't need to set update in progress false because row will be removed. Because so for handle mark red, it goes away once we've successfully marked red upon success. But upon error, we need to do otherwise. All right, so while loading, it deactivates all buttons. Let's see it in action. Mark red, they all get deactivated, and then it goes away. Very nice. Delete, they all, yes, delete. Oh, that one's instant. I gotta bring that back. Yeah, so let's see that in action, actually. Did I put that in bookmark list? I did. Let's do the slowing down in here. Mark red. Let's slow down deleting and see how it works. Let's put Apple in a bunch of times. No, didn't work. Apple.com. There's a nice error state. Delete. Delete. So in that case, for delete, it's actually better if we deactivate the button in the modal. So let's come back to that in a second. But yeah, mark red is deactivating the button. So I think mark red is in a good state. And actually, this upon success is not actually needed. For marking red, we don't need upon success. But it would be good to think about an error state as well. That takes some visual design, though, so I'm going to keep that as a to-do, and maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe that'll be next stream. So deleting calls the onDelete property once we're in the modal there and allows canceling the deletion. So we really need a loading state for in the modal that we disable the buttons in there. So let's try that. Let's add a test for that. But this on failure is over here, so that might be actually easier to do it. And maybe test-driven development will help me kind of get there. So let's move over the dot only. To here, it reactivates all the buttons. And even the name of the test, like, hey, I can reactivate all the buttons upon error. Maybe I got to do a error message as well, but at least this part I can do, so let's do it. All right, on mark red, and now instead of this, we can say on mark red, promise reject. So we're going to fail there. So now we press the button, and we want to ensure that all of these are no longer deactivated, that they come back to be activated after all. All right, reactivates all the buttons. Expected is deactivated false, but is deactivated true. It is still activated. So now we need to get this to pass. And the way we can do that is we can try catch. So upon an error only, set is update in progress to false. I'll put that in there. So I believe this will make the test pass for all the three of those assertions. No wonder that something has not gone quite right. Okay, so that has not been changed. So let's console.log got to error. And let's actually get the error here. Got to error undefined. All right. That I think is not the correct line where that's happening. Got to error undefined. So let's see if it actually re-renders with is update in progress. Oh, you know what? It's asynchronous. I think that's what's happening here. I think that's what's going on. So let me comment this out. Still failing. I think what we need here is a wait for. Wait for deactivated to equal false. And we need this test to be asynchronous. So let's save and make sure it's still failing. It is. Now what we're going to do, we're going to put this in. I think now, because we were waiting for it asynchronously, I think this is going to work now. Because when we clicked mark red, immediately it was set to update in progress. But it's not until after the promise rejects, which is like on the next tick of the event loop, I think. Wait for is not defined. Yeah, my LSP is not working today, despite the fact that I just bragged on social media that it was. So, oops. And it passes. All right, so now let's break it again and make sure that it fails. It does. It was the I'll show you what it was that did that. The act warning actually saved me here. So when I only had the synchronous checks, it was failing, but I got an update to bookmark row inside a test was not wrapped in act. You know, there we go. So now it's pointing to the right line. So it's saying the set is update in progress happens after the end of the test. So that was the clue that got me there. We want to wait for it. And so now, once we've waited for the first one to turn false, the others we can check afterwards that they're false. And you're not supposed to put multiple assertions in a wait for. So I think this will all pass. It does. We can remove that logging now. The simulating errors can even be more annoying, so having a test to cover that is really nice. All right, we're good. And we do want to display an error message as well, and we have 8 minutes left. So maybe I can do that. And one of the nice things about test-driven development is it allows you to separate the functionality from the look and feel. So let's go in here and let's get it to display the error message just in the most simple way, and I can style it later, maybe off the stream. And again, we're going to duplicate because we can remove that duplication soon. It displays an error message. Once I do this, I need to re-clear that out after I activate it again. So now we're going to await, and this time we're just waiting for an element to be present. Find by, I think we found that alert would actually work. Let's try that. Let's find by text first, because I'm newer to these find by role things. Error occurred while marking link red. While marking red. So we'll just wait for that. And that's not really an assertion, but we can say to be visible, because that's actually in React Jest native now. Unable to find an element with that text. So now we have that red failing test, and we can make it green by adding this text. The simplest way to make it green is to hard code that error message, which will bug you if you're not used to test-driven development, but then we'll make it get removed afterwards. So card actions, let's just put it down below. An error occurred while marking red. Text is present there. I think this will make it pass. Expect to be visible. Did I not update Jest native in here? Oh yeah, so Jest native recently added the to be visible assertion. So let's actually add that in. Yeah, I've been so focused on my workshops and getting those updated with this new update to Jest native. Thankfully, someone who's on my Discord group let me know about this update, so I was able to get this change in time for the workshop at React Advanced. So I was very happy. 5.1.2. So let's update to that so we get advantage of this. I guess I could have committed the changes just with the loading indicator. That could have been a good idea. we're going to update just native first. And then actually I'm going to, yeah, let's back this out. I'm going to take this test out. I'm going to take this text out. It's good to have a nice stopping point with a nice passing test with some functionality that you've added. And we're going to specifically run on bookmark row. Thought I removed that assertion. I did not. All right, so let's add this. I'll do it in another window. All right, so let's review our additions here. Added that state, added that handle mark red, that test ID that can maybe go away, but I think maybe not. That on press there, yeah. Oh, that's some logging that's not needed, so we won't commit that. Wait for, yep, while loading and upon failure. Don't need that. Okay, deactivate buttons while marking red. Great. All right, now we can put back those other things that I was just working on. Displays an error message, displays an error message, and now with our updated just native, I'll bet you this is going to pass. It does. Let's take this back out, or just break it by changing the text and make sure it fails. It does. But now notice this text is always showing unconditionally there. And so we want it to only happen upon an error, but we need a test to drive us there. So here we can say, I like to put these in an initially block. Did not display an error message. Say any error message. Do we always render with provider? We do. Bookmark equals bookmark, and we're going to say render it and then expect screen find by text an error occurred, because by convention of my apps, that's just what my error messages start with. Oh, and we want a, I've been saying find recently. I don't know why. I just taught a workshop on this. To be null. Query that it's null to make sure it's not present there. But it is present, so now we need to get it removed. So we add some state. We're going to say update error. Update error is actually going to be a string. Get this message in, because there's multiple updates we're going to do. So we're going to need the option of having multiple types of text there. Set update error. An error occurred while marking red. And then this is going to have, put a condition there, update error and text. Update error. All right, so now it's not shown by default. The tests do pass. That's great. So now I want to refactor the tests a bit. I'd really rather, yeah, come back to alert. I'd really rather find by role. So let's try that. I forget if name is what we're looking for there on the alert. Oh, well, yeah, we need to make it an alert now. I think I have an error message that I think in a previous time we got that too. I have an accessibility role of alert, but it does not. Is that my other app? It was probably Shirley that I did that in. So let's not go down that path just yet. Let's stay where we are. It's easy to get distracted by doing different things, but getting this one bit of functionality, especially because we're pretty much at time. Query by role and make error message accessible. But I do want to use error message still, and I am. So let me just put a default update error here just so we can see it. Hi. Ooh, and it actually centers and gives it a nice margin. That's nice that I worked it out that way. So that's great. So now another thing we'll need to do, though, is that now we have an error update error here. And I can actually simulate this by just stopping my server. And then when I click delete... Oh, no, it's mark red. Then when I click mark red... Oh, but that error happens out there. That's interesting. Apparently, I already implemented this elsewhere in the app. So that would have been good to actually try it. But why does that not come back? That's interesting. Did I not catch? Did it not on mark red? Maybe we don't throw the error back from elsewhere. So I think I found, and we're just going to wrap this up in just a second. I think I found that I don't actually need to do this. Catch. So I need to... I need to not do this because the row will be removed and there'll be that state change problem. So I need basically the parent to tell me back that there was actually an error so I can know to set the update in progress to false. So let's try that out. This is the list here. Mark on red. So this is the thing. I've been in this tendency of when I catch in here, I don't rethrow. So let's rethrow. That will throw it from the list here back to the component, which will then be able to change the state. So let's save. I'm going to have to restart my server here just so that I can get the data up. So I expect what's going to happen here when I click mark red is that it's going to be disabled and then re-enabled, and the error will show up at the top. Yes. Actually, that happened very fast. Let me move this a weight up so we can see it a bit slower. One of the downsides of working at such low levels, you can break something that's already in the case. Click mark red, disabled, and then re-enabled, and the error occurs at the top. So we're actually good. We actually don't need to show the error message in here. We can say error message displayed by parent component. And so we can actually remove update error, remove this, remove that error. We don't need that duplicative. But what is going to test drive us? I guess there's nothing. So like, I guess up at this level here, what test drives that we actually throw the error in here? We'd actually have to test at this high level component that the buttons are successfully deactivated or reactivated afterwards. And I don't really want to do that at my high level test. And yet down at the low level test, what we're just saying is like, hey, we are going to get a failure back in here from the parent component. So I'm not totally sure the best way to test that. Maybe that's not really needed. Maybe it's fine as is here. So something I like to point out as we wrap up here, I love taking small steps. When you take small steps, even when you get sidetracked by a large challenge like we did today, you can still reach the end and have something useful and shippable. Thinking about small steps has been on my mind lately. Someone from social media recently, named Jackson, recently sent me a link to a talk by G-Paw Hill, who's a great Agile teacher and instructor and test-driven development instructor, about small steps and why to take small steps. And I'll put that link in the YouTube video link later so that anyone can see it. But it just talks about all the benefits of small steps. There's many of them to take, many benefits you can get. And one of the benefits we got here was the fact that even though we got on a big sidetrack, it's not like, oh, yep, now all the infinite number of many things I still need to do in the story stretched before me. I've accomplished something useful. I can ship this to myself, and I can get a benefit from having a mark red button that does show the loading state. I need to come back and do the delete button. That's still on my list here. But mark red is shippable. We're done. We're good to go. And I can try it out on my real app to make sure it looks good and feels good. one of the last things I'll do here is just disable that new promise, because I think that was throwing off some of the tests. And with this, I'm going to make sure that all the tests are now passing. Oh, I think that failure is due to the fact that I hard-coded. What does that failure due to? I don't need this. Let's see what's changed in the code. When you've changed a bunch of things at once, it's hard to find out what's causing something to fail, but when it's only a few things, it's easier to find out. Okay, that's better. Better comment. Amend that. Don't need that. Don't need that, actually, because the error message will never be displayed in this component. And then this is no. Oh, is that committed previously? It looks like I committed that previously. Oops. All right, well. Rethrow error to get that child component. No. So all of these changes are things that I want to throw out. But now, was there a new promise in here? There is. So let's see which commit I accidentally put that in. I'm going to look at the changes here. Source, components, bookmark list. Actually, I can get blame to find out. It was 0B5B. Yes, check it out. Show slow marking red. So actually I can just remove that commit now. By interactive rebasing, remove it. Now I think all the tests should pass. And they do. Great. Okay, we've gone a little long, but I got this functionality in. That was great. I probably won't do more of these on the stream just because it could get repetitive at that point. But if I find, I'm going to go through off the stream, work through adding this functionality, and when I find something that's interesting, we'll stop, and maybe that'll be done on a future stream. But we've got lots of other topics on React Native and testing to go through, so we'll reach those later. So thank you so much for joining. I want to say thanks to TestDouble again. Really appreciate them. Again, the workshops that are at codingitwrong.com/speaking, please check that out, and would love for you to join me for some more extended working through testing and or React Native and or React together this fall. But I really appreciate you being here. We are building out some React Native functionality together. So thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time. See ya.